Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
Radio.
Hey, Dabo Sweeney, congrats. I got you in, baby.
This is entertainment. People pay to watch this.
Pass to a cutting Hiltz. He darts in.
Oh! People actually subscribe.
All across central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting wild. Hey!
We welcome you into Drive Time. Here with you until the top of the hour. Next hour, talking SU sports. Tim Leonard with you, as we are every single weeknight, 5 to 6 p.m. Orange football been in the news all throughout the weekend. We had a lot to talk about on the show yesterday. We can kind of put to bed my thoughts on the whole Penn State situation and the deal with Fran Brown and the chances that Fran Brown would maybe go at the end of this season to another school and take another job. And would that be the Penn State job? The chances that Fran Brown is going to Penn State. We hashed that out a ton yesterday on the show. We talked about it a lot on Orange Nation over the last 2 days. I'm about ready to talk football, talk what's on the field, what's going on with the Orange football team, what are the big things that they need to improve on against Pittsburgh this week. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of ready to put all that to bed. So we can do that today. We welcome your thoughts and your phone calls throughout the show today. As always, phone lines are open the entirety of our program. 315-437-7644. Always the phone number to call. Again, 315-437-7644. That's 4ESPN 44. If you want to chime in, talk Fran Brown, talk SU football, talk chances of a win against Pittsburgh, what Ricky Collins needs to improve on, all those things are fair game today. We will talk a little bit of basketball as well. The ACC preseason poll coming out just about an hour ago, and the Orange picked to finish 9th in the ACC preseason poll. The women's basketball team picked to finish 13th in the preseason poll for the conference that came out earlier today as well. J.J. Starling named a preseason All-ACC second-team member. So just 2 teams were announced, no honorable mentions, no Donnie Freeman on that list, but the Orange were represented by one of the leading returning scorers in the conference, second leading returning scorer in the conference to be exact, and that is the Baldwinsville native J.J. Starling. So we can get into that if that is fair, that the Orange are number 9 in the ACC men's basketball preseason poll. What to make of what the preseason metrics are saying about Syracuse. The KenPom numbers came out on Sunday. We haven't really talked a ton about that yet. So we will talk some hoops over the next hour here on the show today and get involved in the Q Sports Talk chat. Join us there. There's no breaks on our Twitch stream. Also, our YouTube simulcast. That's relatively new. You can watch all our shows on YouTube as well. So those are all fun ways to consume the show. And anytime that the show is done, it is immediately archived as soon as we finish the show on QSportsTalk.com and on our YouTube page. Also, you can catch the full podcast version of each of these shows without any breaks on the podcast feed as well. I know a lot of you like podcasts, and that's your way to consume sports content and sports talk content these days. We have our own podcast feed here as well, ESPN Syracuse/Utica Rome. You can get the Orange Nation show, and you can get this show as well. But let's get into it today with our Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive. And I want to discuss the 3 big things that are on my mind right now in regards to football. And we'll go through them one by one here. And I do want to preface this by saying that the first 2 topics, I'm hoping this is kind of the last time we discuss these topics. And I think we've sufficiently talked enough about the Penn State situation and Fran Brown's comments yesterday that made the rounds. But I want to just go on the record one last time on the whole deal and what we talked about on the show yesterday, and then we can turn our attention to a football game week. It's not a bye week anymore. There's a lot to discuss. I know a lot of you are already throwing your hands up and saying the season is over for football, but I am not in that camp. I think it's very important to win as many football games as you possibly can, whether that is 6 games, 5 games, 7 games. Obviously, it feels unlikely that they are going to get past 7 wins at this point, and they would have to essentially run the table and win any game that you give them a remote chance of winning to get in the neighborhood of 7 or more wins. But still, I think there is a difference in going to a bowl game in year 2, keeping the bowl game streak alive, and there's something to be said for the overall tenor of the program, the overall vibes of the locker room are dependent on how much are you winning, and therefore keeping this young core happy and keeping this young core intact for the season that could be a very good one next year. And if you're in the camp right now that this season's a wash and next season is the one that matters, and we knew that going in, and now it is even more of an opinion that you have because of the quarterback situation to Steve Angeli, I hear you there. I would also say for next season to be the one that matters and for next season to have an opportunity to reach its ceiling next year, you need to have guys like Antoine Delorier come back, Demetrius Samuel come back. You need to keep guys happy that are in the program. And bottoming out and going 4-8 or 3-9 or really not showing any signs of growth here in the second half of the season and getting blown out and having some more tough games is going to make it very tough to keep the vibes of the locker room positive going into next season. So each win is very important. Each game is still very important for Orange football as we enter the second half of the season. Let's get into my 3 big things, though, as we start the show today.
Number 1,
I just want to go on the record one more time on this. Fran Brown talked yesterday after he was asked the question about, hey, Coach, what would you have to say to anyone that is worried about you leaving for a bigger job? The more I have had an opportunity to think about this, my opinion is still the same, that anyone that viewed that as, panic meter time, Fran Brown has done an about face from his opening day press conference. Fran Brown is leaving us. He's gone. I think that's crazy. I think that's completely overanalyzing and completely overreacting to a typical response from a head coach around the country when they are asked that kind of uncomfortable question. I don't have any problem with the question being asked. The one thing I will say is I thought Fran, and some of you have brought up this point, and I hear this point, that Fran probably could have been a little bit more complimentary of why he is happy to be at Syracuse, or could have said some nice things about the state of the program and what they're working on here at Syracuse. But honestly, my feel of it is Fran Brown was completely taken aback by the question and maybe did not come across as prepared as he should have been to answer that question. And I think he was just so taken aback by the question that he didn't really even give it an answer. He didn't feel it warranted an answer. That's how I interpreted the situation yesterday with Fran. Maybe if he got another crack at that answer, he would say something a little bit nicer about Syracuse and make sure that he brought up the positives that are going on in the program. That being said, it doesn't really matter how he handles that question. They've got to win games, and he knows that, and he knows that Syracuse is a program right now where all his goals are still in front of him, and he's building the culture here, and he is focused on right here, right now with Syracuse. So I don't think Fran fumbled that answer. I don't think Fran misplayed that. I think he handled it like every coach across America handles that question. He maybe could have added a couple more nice things about Syracuse, but it is completely overreacting to think that because of those comments and because of how he addressed the questions in his opening day press conference, or really just went out of his way to address basically that he will be here for life and all that he said in his opening day press conference. I get that there's a portion of you that think that was a total about face from what we heard from Fran Brown on his opening day press conference. I didn't view it that way. I just thought he was a little startled by the question.
Number 2.
Second thing to just get out of the way, and then we can put this all to bed. Paulie said it on Orange Nation earlier today. that he feels like it's a non-issue, and the more that he has thought of this, there's really very, very little chance that Penn State comes calling for Fran Brown. We had Pete Nakos on the show, Orange Nation, earlier today. He talked about how, and reported earlier today, that Penn State is going to take a big swing and try and call Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman's probably not going to pick up that phone call. Marcus Freeman is not going to be the next head coach at Penn State. But there are 5 to 7 to 8 names that I think will get a call before Fran Brown is looked at. And I just want to make it clear that Fran Brown, again, is not a top 5 candidate for this job. And I think we've spent enough time discussing the likelihood of Fran Brown potentially leaving for Penn State. That does not mean that Fran Brown potentially leaving for another job is not going to be discussed on these airwaves going forward. It could be that a smaller job than Penn State, which is considered the best job out there right now and considered one of the highest paying jobs in the country, maybe something smaller pops up and maybe we have the conversation some more. I'm not ruling out Fran Brown leaving at the end of this year. We don't really know, though. We don't know what he is thinking. We don't know how he feels about the situation at Syracuse, if it's different than how he felt day one when he made those proclamations that he will be here for life. What we do know is Fran Brown's a really good coach, and when you're a good coach, your name is going to come up in rumors and candidate lists and articles once other schools are looking for a new head coach. And because of how good of a coach Fran is, and because of the era that we're in college football and how much that matches up with Fran Brown's personality, I expect this to still be a talking point. Maybe he will address the question when it comes up a second time a little bit more confidently about how he feels about the state of Syracuse's program and what is going on here at Syracuse and why he is not focused on the rumors. But again, I would not overreact to what he said yesterday.
Number 3.
Final thing, let's talk actual football here with our third big thing here. And let's talk about Ricky Collins and what we want to see from the quarterback here against Pittsburgh. I've thought about this some more. I said last week, early on in the week, that I felt like the game plan for Fran Brown and company going into this game against Pittsburgh would be give Ricky Collins the first half for sure, and you really hope that he shows growth in this first half against Pittsburgh. Because the more I think about it, if he is not showing growth by his third start, 2.5 starts in, halftime of the Pittsburgh game, home game here, off a bye week, my anticipation, my expectation is that Jeff Nixon and everyone involved with the offensive game plan and the offensive play calling had a chance to sit back here during the bye week and think about how they can simplify the offense for Ricky Collins. So really, in a way, this should be the best performance we see from Ricky Collins. Pittsburgh is maybe one of the tougher defenses he's faced. I understand that Duke and SMU statistically didn't look great defensively, but this is one more start under his belt. This is off a bye week where maybe Jeff Nixon has had an opportunity to tailor the playbook a little bit more to his strengths now that Jeff Nixon understands what he has in the quarterback position from Ricky Collins. The other point that I think we have to keep into consideration here when we talk about the quarterback position and when will Fran Brown feel like he needs to make a move, and if this continues, at what point do you just have to see what you have in Luke Carney? I feel like homecoming, home game, off the bye week, if it looks like it has for the previous 2 games, and therefore it's like 4 straight weeks of Syracuse football not looking good at all offensively, and every single time we've seen Ricky Collins, the offense has not been able to move the ball. If we see the product we saw in the last 2 games, in the first half against Pittsburgh, I think there's a fair chance that the fan base is booing considerably inside the dome. And that might encourage it into sort of a tipping point scenario. We could get there this week where the frustration from the players is evident even more. And given what we know about how Ricky has played to this point, and given that it's coming off a bye week and the fan base is already ready to kind of see a change, some of them at least, it could get to a tipping point situation. I'm not saying it should, but I think that's something that you have to play into consideration here. So again, I maintain the game plan is probably give Ricky Collins the first half. If he is not improving or showing any signs and you're down big at halftime, I'm okay at that point. If the coaches feel, and they see Luke Carney way more than any of us, if the coaches feel that Luke Carney can provide a spark, I would understand if they would go to him at that point. And I know some of you would bring up the red shirt situation. I think it's more important to be as competitive as you can this year. And if Ricky is not showing growth by that point and the fan base is truly booing inside the dome and all those things are lining up, I would understand giving Luke Carney an opportunity in the second half because you kind of want to know what you have in him then going forward for the future weeks where you do have some tough road games. You don't really want to throw him to the Wolves, so maybe you throw him out there in the second half. That being said, I think there's still a very solid possibility that Ricky does show growth this week off the bye week, and this is an opportunity for him to do just that. We'll get to your phone calls after this time out here. If you want to chime in, 315-437-7644. We're back with more Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Point Guard Advisor.
How's everyone doing in the chat? How are we doing? Wilson Phillips, Tunes for All, yeah. That is a banger, that Wilson Phillips song. I agree, Phil. Tanking's not a thing in college football. And tanking is not in Fran Brown's vocabulary either. I agree, Kev. We're all beating a dead horse. We can move on now from the whole situation. I almost did that, though. I just want to make sure if not everyone listens to every second of the show. And, you know, some people might be like, oh, I was out yesterday, holiday, didn't listen. What are Tim's thoughts on this? So, in a way, it just gets it out there again. But I'm with you. I'm a little tired of entertaining that question or that thought. Ricky, don't lose that fumble, yeah. Ricky, don't throw that ball away. Yeah, it makes no sense that Marcus Freeman would leave Notre Dame for any job, really. That's just early stages of the cycle. They're going to put some stuff out there so that the fan base is pleased and is, you know, expecting big things. Or was interesting to see Dylan Raiola say, the quarterback of Nebraska, that Matt Rule is not going anywhere. Not that that removes Matt Rule from the list, but and obviously Matt Rule is going to not go up to his current quarterback in Nebraska and be like, hey, I'm thinking about taking the Penn State job when they're in the middle of the season. So makes sense that he would definitively tell him I'm here for good and all that. He can still go to Penn State, but kind of interesting. Yeah, the coaching vacancy odds it's an interesting, feels like wrong that you can bet on that a little. And it also feels like those odds, more so than other odds, get really influenced by a couple moments or a couple bets or just sway quite a bit. Yeah. I'm not singing that. If I didn't sing it in that moment, then I don't think you guys are ever going to hear me sing. Paulie and I were vibing, though, at the end of the show. You guys don't want to hear me sing either. That would not be good. I'm sure we got some out-of-town folks in here. Philly's Most Wanted. You think they're going to cover, what is it, 10.5 right now? I find it hard to back the offense at the minute, but as I said, coming off the bye week, maybe this is the time it clicks. Five deep, yeah. Already dropped a point, okay.
On 1200 AM and 1440 AM. ESPN 97.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Rolling along with Drive Time. Tim Leonard with you until 6 p.m. 5 to 6 p.m. weeknights. You've got us here on Drive Time talking SU sports, talking SU football. We'll get into some hoops as well. ACC preseason poll dropped for the men and the women's basketball teams today. Getting to that time of year. Exhibition game is now about a week and a half away. First exhibition game for the men's team, Buffalo, next Saturday. 7 p.m. start from the Sabres Arena. That'll be a neutral site. After football has got Georgia Tech on the road next Saturday for a noon kickoff. So our first double dip, first crossover Saturday, which is always a fun sports time here as we get into mid-late October. You got all four sports, and the sports equinox will be coming our way very soon. MLB playoffs in full swing. Lots of sports on the television each and every night. Of course, lots of football as well, and we'll continue to keep you updated on all of it here on Drive Time. We'll get into my thoughts on the biggest key for the Orange football team in the second half of the season, but right now let's go to the phone lines where Dave has been waiting patiently. You can call in as well at 315-437-7644. Let's go to Dave in Syracuse, though. Dave, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tim.
How's it going?
Good. I want to hit on two things real quick. First of all, the press conference. Tim, if Fran Brown didn't know that he was going to be asked two specific questions, one about the quarterback situation, and two, in some vein, about the opening at Penn State, then the press people in the athletic department should be fired right away. He should have been totally prepared to answer those questions. They were obviously going to come.
Maybe they did prepare him. I'm not saying definitively that he wasn't prepared. I'm with you. I think it was a reasonable question that he should have been ready for. Just the way he responded to it, he seemed like appalled that the question was asked. So that's why I drew the conclusion that maybe it caught him off guard a little bit.
Oh, I see what you're saying, but I think that's just Fran Brown and how he works.
Sure.
And you know, when people ask questions and the press asks questions, they ought to be prepared for what Fran Brown brings. You can't expect him to answer the way you think he's going to answer it, because he's always going to be himself. And it didn't surprise me in the least that he reacted that way and mumbled in between other questions like he was mad at it. And that's kind of who he is, and it's kind of what we like about him in a way. My other thing is, Tim, and so I've been a lifelong Syracuse fan. I'm in my 60s now. I bleed orange. But the thing that annoys me the most in today's world about being a Syracuse fan is every time a football coach has a modicum of success, and for crying out loud, Fran Brown's been here 1 year and a few games, we have to worry about losing them. I'm so tired of that. I'm so tired of the talk. I guess I understand why you have to do it. We spend full talk shows talking about it. But as a fan, I'm sure all of us fans feel the same way. Why do we always have to worry about losing a coach because he has one good year? I mean, how are we ever going to be relevant if our coach leaves after 1 or 2 years every year and we can't have any continuity? I mean, I don't see how we could ever be relevant again if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, this is a good conversation to get into, Dave. I appreciate you checking in, and I totally understand why, if you're a fan, you would be fatigued at this whole premise of, here we go again. The coach wins a little bit, and already we have to be worried about, is a big program going to come in and swoop him away? A couple things I would say. One, this is the Penn State job. This is one of the best jobs in the country. So there's a lot of programs around the country that feel like they have a good coach right now and they're in a good situation and they don't want to be worried about this, but they are worried about it this week because this is not a job that comes open all the time. And I think we're all, for the most part, in agreement that Fran Brown is not going to leave for another ACC job, a Big 12 job. He would leave for a very big job. And that's why it feels like it's still probably a little bit premature, a little bit early for us to be having these conversations. And I know a lot of you just feel that Fran said so definitively in his opening press conference that he is not one of those guys that's going to bolt after a couple years. And because of that, that adds to, why are the talk radio guys already talking about this? This is a non-starter. This isn't even a conversation. I would say it is frustrating that that's the position Syracuse is in, but that's also the position that 90% of programs are in when the Penn State job comes open. Nebraska has tons of money. Nebraska has a great tradition. They could be an elite program. They could win with the likes of anyone. They draw great fan bases. They've got a lot of things going for them. And Matt Rule is still being brought up. I mean, Marcus Freeman's name came up today, and I think that's crazy to think that he would leave Notre Dame. But that's the type of money that Penn State is going to be offering, and that's the type of program and level of job that it is. And I totally get why it would be frustrating to think that Syracuse can never keep a coach. And we have made the point on this show, on Orange Nation, and I think it was Steve who said it pretty definitively earlier in the year, and I totally agree with him. He said, if Fran Brown is not the coach that solves this thing at Syracuse, and if Fran Brown can't get Syracuse to the level that they want, then I'm not sure that any coach can get Syracuse to the level that they want. I definitely feel like there has been more emphasis of late and more of an understanding within the athletics department that you've got to pay big money right now in college football because that is the big money business and that is the most important sport to be successful at. And I think, if anything, we haven't given the athletic department enough credit for recognizing in today's era in college sports and in the landscape we're in, if you're not good at football, you can't really be good at other stuff. And we're seeing it with ACC schools that are predominantly basketball-heavy schools that are now struggling in basketball because they weren't bringing in the football revenue that the SEC and the Big Ten was bringing in. And now these non-traditional schools that didn't used to be at the top of the AP poll in basketball are all over the top of the AP poll, whether it's Alabama or Georgia or Auburn or these SEC schools that we're not used to. Just look at how successful the SEC has been in men's basketball in the last 3-4 years. That's not a coincidence. It's because the money has gone from football to them, and they were better positioned in the given era of college athletics to succeed. So I get the frustration, and I think it's a very fair and well-said point by Dave that it is annoying that we keep having to have these conversations. Some of it is we talk on the radio for multiple hours every day, and we understand that a lot of you out there have thoughts on the situation, and that's what makes sports talk radio go round. And as I said at the start of the show today, I think we have used enough oxygen on this topic for this week and going forward, really, for at least a little bit. I understand that a lot of you probably feel, well, why are they still talking about this? It's Penn State. Fran Brown is not ready to be the head coach at Penn State. Penn State is not going to come calling for him. But there was a lot of visceral reaction yesterday to what Fran had to say and what Fran's reaction was to the question that was posed to him. And that caught some people off guard, it seemed like. So when there's that much reaction, we're going to continue to talk about it. And again, we don't really know how much Fran Brown is contemplating leaving Syracuse, if at all. And I understand if you're of the camp that take Fran Brown for everything he has said to this point. He has not led us astray, and everything he said has been true. That you have a lot of ammo right now, based on what he said in his opening day press conference, to believe that Fran Brown is not going anywhere. It's just that's going to be talked about, and it's going to continue to be talked about because it's a very wild coaching carousel right now. And a lot of people, a lot of coaches, very good coaches, are going to be asked tough questions about, are they interested in other jobs? And Fran Brown was asked it for the first time this week. We'll hit a timeout. I see the phone lines are ringing again. We'll get some more of your thoughts. We can talk some basketball as well at 315-437-7644. You can call in if you have any thoughts right now on Orange football or Orange basketball. 4 ESPN 44 is the phone number to call. We're back after this on Drive Time on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Saturday, the Orange.
Mike, I don't know if there's any way to win that bet, but I appreciate you. It's a lot of money to throw down. AAA must be paying pretty good. Bet on SU to score 3. Let's hope they can get past 3 in this game. Jeez. Put it this way. I mean, everything we know about the interest in making football very good right now, if Fran Brown came to Syracuse, came to John Wildtack and said, hey, I got offered X amount from X school. I would like to stay at Syracuse, but this, like a typical conversation of negotiating and using a counter offer or another offer to create a counter offer from your current job, I would have to think Syracuse would do pretty much all they could to keep Fran Brown, and I think they would pony up more money than what we are used to for Syracuse football. That being said, it's still a tough question of when you do that. I know a lot of you are probably like, just extend Fran right now. John Wildtack made that decision to extend Dino Babers, and then that backfired. And at the time, it felt like the most obvious decision ever, and all of us were in agreement. Don't let Dino go to Texas or somewhere else. You've got to extend him. It's pretty similar to how we're feeling about the Fran extension right now. And you have to wonder if maybe John making that decision once makes him more hesitant to jump in after the second year this time around. But who knows? It's not an easy decision. Yeah, I think you really want Fran Brown when realignment. I mean, that would be massive to have Fran Brown and the program trending up going into that. Because let's face it, I know a lot of you follow, if you're listening to this, you follow Syracuse very, very closely. For Syracuse to be relevant as an athletics program, you've got to do all you can to be in that Super League conversation. I know basketball is still, in a way, what drives the bus in terms of fandom and eyeballs and engagement, but football is what drives money, and football is what is seen by everyone on TV more so than basketball. So it's hard to imagine them being as relevant of a brand, phones ringing, Gio, as they have been with no Super League or no entry into the top of the Super League. That would really set them back. And it's a legitimate concern right now. Can you make sure you're not on the outside looking in when that comes around? That's the biggest concern, I would have to think, with the state of the athletic department and what's on John Wildhack's mind or anyone that works closely with him.
.com, on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio Syracuse.
Rolling along with Drive Time. Phone lines are open throughout the entirety of our show today. 315-437-7644. I want to hear from you. Your thoughts on SU football. We'll talk a little hoops before we wrap up the show today, here with you until the top of the hour. But let's keep the phone calls coming. We're talking Orange football. We're talking a lot of Fran Brown. He's been in the news. He's made comments on his chances of staying at Syracuse long term, and any takeaways that you have from that. We welcome your thoughts throughout the show today, although we have talked a ton about this in the Penn State situation, but it's still the topic of the week, and it's still something that is on a lot of your minds, I know. So let's keep the phone calls coming. Let's check in with Mark, who is in New York City. What's up, Mark?
Hey, Tim. Yeah, to your point, it's all we're talking about. You kind of forget we have a game this weekend.
I know. We'll have time to talk about that too, though, I guess.
Exactly. But a couple points. The first point, I think to the prior caller, I think his name was Dave.
Yep.
Kind of here we go. We're having this conversation again. The one thing I always sit back on is, we've never really had a coach jump from Syracuse to another big college program. The only time it's really happened was Doug Marrone, who went to the NFL. And how can you blame him for jumping up to the NFL? So I get tired of these conversations that were kind of a stepping stone when it's never really happened before. I mean, Dino stuck around for 8 years when we were all getting nervous after, I think, his third year, he was going to leave. So that's my first point. My second point, just to the whole press conference thing, I saw this conversation happening on some forums and on Twitter that, Javon Edmonds' question, while I thought it was a valid question, I went back and listened to it, that it's more the way he phrased it was, hey, Fran, would you leave for a bigger job? And it kind of almost seems that I saw this conversation happening that, Fran might have got insulted that, he doesn't have a big job right now, that, Penn State's the bigger job. And, we all kind of assume that, but just kind of directly saying on its face, something else is a bigger job was kind of what was insulting. And, I'm asking you as a media member, do you think that question was a little off in that way?
It's hard to say, right? Because, Fran seems startled by the question. I understand that maybe that ticked him off a little bit because we know his perception of Syracuse is you can win big here and we're going to win big here, and it's not if, but when for Fran Brown winning big at Syracuse. It's possible. It's hard. We're all speculating on what he took issue with, but it did seem like just the nature of the question itself, that it was being asked, caught him off guard. And that was the root of why he was frustrated. Maybe the fact that Javon threw in bigger school also escalated it. But I don't know even if he said something different from how he phrased it, I don't know if the bigger school part of it was really what kind of got him bothered by the question. And, Mark just said it again, and I've said it. I think it is a totally fair question. I think he was prepared to answer that question in a way. You could make a case that his answer showed how prepared he was. I guess it seemed like he was a little agitated at the question, more agitated than I would have guessed he would have been. And that led me to believe, okay, if you're that frustrated at the question, maybe you didn't take the time to kind of answer the question as much as you would have if you knew it was coming. The way Matt Rule answered the question for the Nebraska media, when they asked him, was nodding his head all along, knowing that question was coming. And it is a fair point to say, well, of course he knew that question was coming. But just the way Fran handled it, I mean, that's the first time he's been asked on a Monday press conference. Matt Rule has dealt with those questions, as he said, at Temple, at Baylor. He's experienced in that arena. Fran is, at the end of the day, still in his second year talking to the media as a head coach of a football program. So it's okay if maybe it caught him off guard a little bit, and maybe we'll see if he gets asked that question again down the road, if he handles it differently. Although, again, I maintain, I don't think he handled it poorly. I think it was just an answer that usually when a coach is asked that question, their answer never elicits pom-poms and everyone being pumped up. It's very rare that you see so-and-so said this to the rumors of them leaving, and then you go to the Twitter replies, and the fans of that program are not, oh, no, he's leaving, we're doomed. And that's just the reaction that usually comes from when those questions are asked, because as we talked about a lot yesterday, if you're Fran Brown's agent, you would not advise him to say, there's no shot I'm leaving. That would not be good economical sense, or that would not make economical sense for Fran Brown's agent or Fran Brown himself, and continuing to keep the leverage that he has in the situation. So, yeah, I think we've hashed this one out as much as you possibly can, the Penn State situation, and the idea of, did Fran handle the question the right way and what ticked him off? And we're all just speculating. We're all overanalyzing what really is pretty commonplace. I mean, I think we're making a lot out of kind of a non-story here. Fran probably knew that question was coming. He maybe could have handled it better, or maybe he was surprised in how the question was asked. It's possible that is what set him off. Regardless, if you thought Fran Brown was staying before he said that, and you take his word at face value, I don't think you should change your opinion. If you thought Fran Brown might be leaving, maybe there's some ammo there, but I think your opinion shouldn't change regardless of how Fran Brown handled that question. And he just sort of handled it, to me, like he expected any college football coach to handle that question. And that's basically what every coach has said this week. And it's going back to Mark's first point of the idea of, is it really a stepping stone job? Since Syracuse has fallen off from one of the top tier programs in the late 90s, I understand why someone like Dave would feel that way, because really when they have had any winning seasons, then it has been followed by conversations. And we had the same conversations about Dino Babers, and we just talked about in the Q Sports Talk break. But John Wilczek made the decision at the time that was seen as the obvious decision to extend Dino Babers when there were rumors of Texas and bigger time jobs and a lot of big schools that were interested in Dino. And his name had been popping up a lot more than Fran Brown to this point after the 10-win season in 2018. And they extended him, and everyone applauded that decision at the time. And then it felt like the wrong decision in 2 to 3 years after that. So it's not easy. I mean, being an AD right now, juggling all the finances that come with college athletics and what you're having to juggle, it's a very tough job. And the decision of extend Fran Brown, that's not as easy as maybe the average fan thinks, because money does not grow on trees. And right now, more than any era in college athletics, you want to maximize whatever money you have, because, again, revenue share became a thing, and a large portion of the SU Athletics budget and the profit that they make each year and what they bring in revenue is now gone poof and gone missing, because it's gone to the players directly. So it's now more important than ever to make sure that you're not wasting money, or you're not spending money that you're going to regret that you spent. And it's a tough decision right now on when you extend Fran Brown. Is it too early right now? Do you do it already? I understand naturally why the fan reaction is, stop messing around, extend this guy right now. We have to keep him. If we can't win with Fran Brown, we can't win with anyone. It's so important right now to make sure that you are a winner going into the realignment, going into a potential Super League down the road. So I get why the average fan is like, it's not my money, just go extend the guy. Do it already. But if you're in that position like a John Wildtack, or if you're at the top of the athletic department right now and you're weighing those decisions, you're not an average fan. You're juggling a lot more, and you have to come up with the money, and you have to make sure that after what happened with Dino Babers, you are confident that you're ready to take that leap again and put confidence in Fran Brown. And everything to this point has suggested to me that they will give him an extension offer at some point. It's just, do you do it now? Is it too early? Do you do it after this season? Do you wait and see a little bit longer? These are the conversations that probably they're weighing and they're having, and they should be having right now. And it's all fascinating sports talk radio fodder. We'll hit our final timeout. We'll talk a little basketball on the other side. ACC preseason poll was dropped earlier today. We'll get into what to make of where Syracuse ranks in that on Drive Time here on ESPN Radio and KeySportsTalk.com.
Saturday, the
Yeah, Kev, we got to figure out a way to get you that pizza. We blew the golden chance there. Shoot, I mean, at this point, do you have Twitter, Kev? Just DM me and I'll send you a Venmo. That's probably the best way to make sure we straighten up the bet. Maybe you can Twitch whisper me too if you don't have that. Yeah, that was Dino's downfall. He never improved the recruiting, really. Off of the 10-win season, they didn't show enough strides recruiting-wise. I can't control the callers, Bixby. People have called in and gotten me going on it some more. So I know you go in with the plans of, we've talked about this enough, but I'm also going to listen to what people want to hear from me and what people want to call in and ask. All right, Kev. Well, you could always hold it over my head that you got it right. You'll always have, until our next bet. Maybe I'll get you next time. Break into some Wilson Phillips, yeah. Maybe that's how I get the second hour. That's how we see the rating spike, when I just break into Wilson Phillips. Yeah, the trenches were not good enough recruiting-wise. I think wide receiver, he was fine. I mean, they had some obviously very good transfers in and solid wide receiver numbers. Maybe you could make a case he didn't totally reach the maximum level of receivers they could have gotten, considering they were shattering records in his first couple years, but they had talent at wide receiver. It wasn't like the wide receiver position was not as talented as other positions. But I did think early on in his tenure, could they turn into a wide receiver pipeline, kind of really be a strength year in and year out, and they never really got that. Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, there were a lot of guys last year that were Dino guys that Fran kept, and give him credit for keeping them, but it was a mix. Well, I mean, are you just discounting the transfers he added? Philly's most wanted, like Ambedatawa was a transfer, but I'm counting that into the equation as well. I'm talking about like what was the overall talent at wide receiver when Dino Babers was here. I think we're in agreement though that the biggest issue was the trenches and the overall talent there was not enough. Yeah, Fran also has increased the NIL money because he's Fran, too. Dino probably was not the perfect fit for how do I get more NIL into the program. He kind of just seemed a little defeated at the end of his tenure on that and just threw his hands up and was like, we can't win.
ESPN 97.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Final segment on the show this afternoon. Drive time with Tim Leonard. We're going to talk a little hoops before we get out of here today. If you'd like to chime in, you can call in right now. We can work you in before we wrap up. 315-437-7644. Always the phone number to call. ACC preseason poll dropped today for the men's and women's basketball teams. And start with the men. The Orange were number 9 in the ACC preseason poll. Got to be a little bit better than that, likely to make the tournament. I have seen some places, some outlets saying 8 ACC teams will make the field of 68 this year, which would be quite the spike from 4 last year. And UNC was the very last team in last year. Probably more than likely that we're talking 5, 6 ACC teams making it into the big dance. At the end of the year, Syracuse picked to finish 9th. Duke and Louisville got first place votes. Those were the only 2 schools. Duke number 1 with 34 first place votes. Louisville checks in at number 2, 15 first place votes. They are preseason AP top 25 teams, as well as UNC right on the border of that. UNC number 3 in the ACC preseason poll. NC State, Virginia, considered by most to be in the consensus top 5 right now. The KenPom rankings much lower on Virginia, much higher on Clemson. Those came out on Sunday. Clemson also pretty high on this list, or a little bit higher than I thought they were going to be for this media poll as well. Clemson, the number 7 team. Then you've got Miami, number 8, Syracuse, 9. Very bunched up when you get to the middle on voting and how close all these teams were, and that's been the case on any of the preseason metrics we've seen. Notre Dame, 10, Wake Forest, 11, even Virginia Tech at 12. I know that there's some optimism around Virginia Tech that they're going to have a better year and they put in more resources. Kind of a similar feel to the optimism for those that are close to Syracuse right now. About what I expected, though, for the Orange to be in this AP poll. We talked about it with Stephen Pauly on Orange Nation. We were all kind of guessing 9, 10 range. They come in at number 9 right now. Very tough to project these things. And we know that Syracuse is going to have to finish better than 9th in the league in order to keep this fan base happy, or I guess prevent the fan base from being even more upset than they are, is maybe how I should have phrased that. And keep Red Autry here is probably going to require exceeding expectations this season on what they're projected to finish. J.J. Starling was named 2nd team All-ACC, so 10 players on the All-ACC preseason, a first team and a second team. Starling cracked the second team. Women's basketball team did not have any All-ACC nominees or mentions. They check in at number 13 in the poll. Kind of gone under the radar. I know we're talking a lot about men's basketball and how big of a year it is for them. The women's basketball team has also improved their resources, and after a down year last year, addressed what they felt were some weaknesses on the roster. They feel like they have a much more talented roster this year. So it's a very similar conversation. They're a little bit lower on the preseason metrics, of course, than Syracuse, and it feels less likely that they will be a tournament team, at least as we see it right now. That's just what the pundits are saying, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot. Seeing them 13, though, I mean, they're going to need a solid year. It's a pretty big year for Coach Jack when you consider first 2 years went very, very well, about as good as you could have possibly hoped. She was the ACC Coach of the Year in her second year, Deasia Fair was the star. They made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. But if you have another down year here, especially after they have seemingly done a good job at putting more resources into the program, better positioning them to bring in the talent level and the players that they need to succeed in the ACC. Obviously, Coach Jack isn't on the hot. I'm not saying that. Don't get it wrong. It's a different conversation than what it is for Adrian Autry, and there's a different level of eyeballs on one program than the other. But you don't want the narrative to have more steam that you can't win without Deasia Fair. And if it is 2 straight years without her winning, then you take in Coach Jack's tenure at Syracuse, and it's 4 years, and the 2 good years have been with the star player. And I'm sure that they feel that they're going to dispel that narrative this year, because it does seem like when I've talked to people around the program, there is a big uptick, like the men, there's a big uptick in the talent level for the women's team. So going to be fascinating. They also seem to schedule in a similar format where they should be able to beat up on a lot of non-conference opponents this year and get some benefit to their metrics, maybe the net ranking and stuff like that, based on how they've laid out the schedule. So similar paths after, unfortunately, similar paths last year for both basketball programs. But again, ACC preseason poll has the women's basketball team picked to finish 13th. Women's basketball team also added a new GM yesterday, so that kind of adds to their better position for this era right now. And it's going to be interesting how successful they can be going forward. And the men's team picked to finish 9th in the ACC preseason poll. KenPom has them as the 10th best team out of the ACC right now. That'll wrap up the show this afternoon. Thanks to Giovanni Heater for producing. Thanks to all of you for calling in. And we'll be back tomorrow for another drive time, 5 to 6 p.m. You can always watch our shows on QSportsTalk.com, Q Sports Talk on our YouTube page. You can subscribe there to get all our content, interviews, and things like that on our YouTube page. And we will catch you tomorrow on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Is your